is always safer in the hands of the people than in the conference rooms of any elite.
Sam Seder.
They are unanimous in their hate for me, and I welcome their hatred.
We must guard against the acquisition of unwarranted influence, whether sought or unsought, by the military-industrial complex.
The Majority Report with Sam Seder.
Ever get the feeling you've been cheated?
It is Wednesday, August 16th, 2023. My name is Emma Vigeland, in for Sam Seder, and this is the 5-time award-winning Majority Report. We are broadcasting live steps from the industrially ravaged Gowanus Canal in the heartland of America, downtown Brooklyn, USA. On the program today, Vinnie Perrone, president of Teamsters Local 804 on the historic UPS deal. And later in the show, Rebecca Lewis of City and State New York on the fight to fully legalize safe injection sites in the state. Meanwhile, Trump and the 18 co-defendants to be booked at the Fulton County Jail, says the sheriff's office. He's got that Fulton prison blues. And apparently some of the co-defendants, Powell, Eastman, Giuliani, well, it seems like Trump did not pay for the legal services they provided for the coup attempt. So maybe those divisions exploited by prosecutors? Because apparently, yes.
We need loyalty.
Giuliani is hurting financially right now, selling his apartment in New York amid multiple defamation suits and the sexual assault and harassment one.
Might have to sell some of those tits he owns as well.
They're his. They're his property. Republican voters remain unfazed, however. Related to Trump, 63% want him to run again, 74% say they'd support him in the general. The first victims in the horrific Maui fires have been identified, and evidence grows showing that fallen power lines likely the cause. The Biden administration announces loosened restrictions on Colorado River water access. A former high-ranking FBI official pleads guilty to money laundering on behalf of a Russian billionaire for bribes. Dianne Feinstein's daughter alleges her mother is a victim of elder abuse, at least with her finances.
She's also a senator.
Yeah, begs the question, what about in her capacity as senator from California?
I think if you're being elder abused, you can't be senator anymore. You need to...
Why would you say something so controversial and so brave? The newly announced chair of the 2024 DNC, Democratic National Convention, I should say, comes from a consulting group that helped squash labor protections for companies, including Lyft. The man who,
I'm the most pro-labor president.
Come on, man.
Come on.
The man who set fire to an Illinois Planned Parenthood sentenced to 10 years in prison. North Carolina Republicans working to override the governor's veto of their anti-gender affirming care bill for minors. And lastly, RFK's ostensibly Democratic presidential campaign has hired a sitting Republican state representative to the staff. All this and more on today's Majority Report. I am contractually obligated to tell you it is Hump Day, even in Sam's absence. His presence as a boss looms large, and I'd be dealing with legal action on that front if I were not to communicate with you all that day. Hello to Matt. Hello to Bradley.
Hello.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, good sir. A bit of a programming note for you guys. Just a reminder, Sam will be out for the rest of this week and next week on vacation. And on Friday, we are having a pre-recorded episode because I am off to a wedding. So, Matt and Bradley get some well-deserved time off. But that's just going to be a bit of a shake-up this week. No, traditional casual Friday. But we'll still have a pre-recorded episode for you.
Maybe I'll do a Twitch stream.
A Twitch stream?
Trying to hoover up some of this audience.
Well, a Twitch stream in, like, what are you going to play? The detective game?
The detective game, obviously.
Obviously.
I got some good clues on twitch.tv/leftreckoning last Sunday night, so we're in the middle of a case.
Ooh. Wow. Well, I'm can't wait to hear how that shakes out. You know, I'm
sure you're gonna follow up.
I'm on the edge of my seat. Speaking of cases being solved, you provide me with a very smooth transition. I appreciate that. Although it's not smooth when you call it out, but you know, I digress. Rudy Giuliani, he's really feeling the heat right now. He is one of the now named co-conspirators in the Georgia indictment. He and Donald Trump are a part of the 19 people who are being charged in this super case of trying to the coup crew. They're a part of that big group that's being all charged together, which is a very different strategy from the Jack Smith federal indictment, where the 6 co-conspirators are not named, but it's Giuliani in that case, it's Eastman, it's Chesebro, or Cheesebro, as we like to call him, it is Sidney Powell. Those people all included in this indictment as well, and then some. There's Jenna Ellis, other people in Trump's orbit, Mark Meadows. What a fall from grace for that guy who was once like a sitting member of Congress. But this indictment is as consequential, really, as the federal one, especially because we have all of this information now out in the open with the co-conspirators and their efforts to overturn, to put up the election, to put up false electors, to pressure lawmakers in Georgia and Pennsylvania and in other states. There's a lot of just evidence in this document that we knew some of it, but to have it laid out both in the federal indictment and in this case, I mean, it's breathtaking in a bad way.
It's not good when Trump's media surrogates, like we talked about yesterday, like in Gorka, are having to say that saying in the midst of an election being sort of certified that, hey, I need more votes so I actually win this thing. Can you find me? It is similar to saying I feel like vanilla ice cream. We've not really brought a fine point to the defense yet.
Right. It's not the equivalent of going out to eat and being like, should we get the dessert menu? It's more, I'm calling the Secretary of State of a state and saying in mob terms,
it's a farrago.
I mean, look,
if we could just find a couple mil,
I'm gonna make you an offer you can't refuse: the strawberry mochi or the chocolate mochi.
What an absolute farrago, Rob.
That was
Vanilla ice cream.
Vanilla ice cream. Why would you deny the president that? And like so they really have nothing going for them. I mean, they're trying to say that this is all protected under free speech, which is clearly not the case because it's not the speech that's being targeted. It is the conspiracy, which is why in the Georgia case, these are RICO charges, is racketeering, which Giuliani made quite famous in his capacity in New York City.
It's a devastating effect.
Yeah, where he went after the mob on RICO charges, and that was one of the ways in New York that they were actually able to pin these guys down. And now it's really come full circle for Rudy. Here he is on Newsmax, after being charged with those RICO charges in Georgia. And speaking about the Fulton County DA, Fani Willis, naturally, you will notice that the Republicans going after her are just falling back into racist conspiracies, but here we go.
And every state should not be setting different rules. I wonder if she thought her way through that. She certainly indicted me for nothing, for being a lawyer, for which I am very resentful.
Do you think she's upping the ante by using RICO, I don't know, to get some sort of attention for herself or to get some...
Pause it real quick. Rudy, you don't have to tell us you're resentful. We got that.
He's using I statements, right? I mean, in therapy, they tell you that you're supposed to express your feelings in a healthier way, right?
Sorry, I don't mean to be suppressive.
Yeah. I mean, why do you hate mental health? Let's start at the beginning.
And every state should not be setting different rules. I wonder if she thought her way through that. She certainly indicted me for nothing, for being a lawyer, for which I am very resentful.
Do you think she's upping the ante by using RICO, I don't know, to get some sort of attention for herself or to get some media attention? Go ahead.
But to a ridiculous degree, to the degree that she's making a fool out of herself. I mean, the end result of Fannie Willis in the annals of the law will be incompetent prosecutor who didn't even know how to get an indictment and didn't realize the case was going to be removed. So she's had her moment of glory, and her place in history will be very different. Let's say mine. Do you know after I was finished testifying, she wanted to meet with me? Because she's always wanted to meet with me because of my great record. This is what she said to me. This woman is a politician through and through.
Rudy was rizzing her up.
Yeah, maybe she wants to meet with you to do your job, not to bask in the glory that is you, Rudy.
Yeah, look, I'm not a legal expert, and I've seen some people say maybe this office might be stretched itself a little bit thin with this strategy. I have no idea. But what I do know is there is a risk to doing this sort of stuff and going at say former presidents for prosecutions, and they'd only be doing it if they were somewhat confident that there was a case to be made here. And the Ben Shapiro case of oh, this is slippery slope, now it's going to be open season on all politicians. No, if Republicans weren't afraid of going too far and risking it, they would be doing stuff on Hunter Biden in the courts instead of just in oversight committees.
Yeah. And I mean, I think that the criticism, if that's the case, that's natural given the fact that this is the Fulton County DA versus the federal government, right. Where their strategies and their resources, it's just going to exceed that by its very nature.
What kind of office is ready to prosecute a president?
Yeah, I mean, and she just fell into this. Yes, she's getting media attention, but that's because of the fact that the president is being charged.
Right, and
in
of course,
instance.
Prosecution, it is a semi-political position, and yeah, but part of it is she sees the opportunity, and I think all these prosecutors are hey, there's a galloping criminal at the top of American society, and it's making everybody look bad, and maybe I can be the one to do something about it with the law.
Totally.
That's what they look at.
And I mean, in Georgia as well, where it was such an important pivot point really for the Democrats, because there has been decades and decades of voter suppression in that state. There was voter suppression in the gubernatorial race where Stacey Abrams lost, given the fact that the guy she was running against was also in charge of the elections there. It's been a long, long road for Black people in that state to get any kind of political representation. And then when it came to 2020, there were efforts to completely throw out their votes, led by the President of the United States and Rudy Giuliani there. And so...
Sorry, a prosecutor A sees a problem with that and B sees a political opportunity in it.
It totally. And I mean, the charges there, I mean, there's so much evidence too. One, the phone call that Trump made that is recorded where he's trying to find the 11,000 votes, which Gorka likened to, making an order for a vanilla, or saying, oh, I wish I had vanilla ice cream right now. But I mean, it also includes showing Mark Meadows basically seeking the number for the Pennsylvania speaker, and trying to pressure the Pennsylvania legislature there. Eastman pressuring state lawmakers, trying to get Ronna McDaniel on board with fake electors. That's what some of the indictment shows. I mean, Giuliani in particular, some of the stuff that's listed in the indictment is also included in a defamation suit against him now, where he went after a mother-daughter Black pair of poll workers and said that they were passing around USB ports like they were vials of heroin and cocaine, is what he said when speaking to the Georgia panel on this. And that's a part of their defamation suit against him because they were subject to immense harassment by mobs of Trump supporters. These are not victimless crimes.
Yeah.
And Giuliani hopefully has to pay the piper on that, let alone the reports coming out today that he's in immense financial trouble because Giuliani, let's be clear here, he's not just facing this Georgia probe. He is also, again, eventually, once the case against Trump goes through with Jack Smith, he's one of the unnamed co-conspirators that they'll likely bring charges towards after the Trump probe is concluded. He is also facing, as I mentioned, the Georgia poll worker defamation suit, the Smartmatic defamation suit, the Dominion defamation suit, and then, the Georgia case, the Jack Smith case, and the sexual abuse and harassment case.
And all for just being a lawyer.
And all for just loving tits. And wanting to own them, okay? So, I mean, that guy is just a total clown. But the point is that he's feeling the heat. And it is satisfying to watch some of these walls closing in on these guys because they really are. They tried to overturn our election.
Yeah, these are criminals.
In addition to being generally vile, racist, disgusting pigs behind the scenes, as was clear in this sexual abuse suit against him, but
and in the Borat, or is that Borat?
Yep, Borat too. Yeah. On camera in that.
Crazy.
Yep. So, Rudy Giuliani, c'est la vie. Quick break, or actually quick word from one of our sponsors, Sam from the Beyond, and then we will be speaking to Vinnie Perrone of the Teamsters.
Hey, folks. One of my biggest challenges is, and I share this with other parents, you don't want to feel bad about not making your kids dinner. But then also, you don't want to get extremely frustrated because of all the time that you got to spend preparing the dinner, buying the groceries, and then have your kids go like, ugh, this doesn't taste good because you don't know how to cook. Well, that's how I started using HelloFresh. Now, I've had delivery, meal delivery, and this what it does is they deliver you ingredients for meals, and they give you recipes, and they're great dishes all across the board. But for me, the big thing about HelloFresh is that they have meals that are not only like delicious, but also aren't necessarily like too involved. Okay. And so I'm not saying that I don't want to, spend time making, meals for my kids, but I don't want to spend time making meals for my kids. I really don't. And the beauty of HelloFresh is they make it much, much easier to cook a great meal. So you get to choose, like, not only do you get to choose all sorts of like, I want a vegetarian plan, or I want a paleo plan, or I want this kind of plan or whatnot. You also get to pick meals within those plans that fit your lifestyle a little better. So I could choose like, a very involved like spicy Peruvian chicken dish, which takes 30 minutes. I would love to do that. Eventually I will, but I'm in a hurry. So I'm going to choose like, I made a turkey, like I guess maybe they call it ragu. It's like a turkey meat, like a turkey in spaghetti, like a turkey spaghetti sauce. And I made some with zucchini, some without, because Saul's not going to eat the zucchini. But it took me like 20 minutes. They have all sorts of amazing recipes. They've got, I did a pork chop with balsamic vinegar, broccoli on the side. Again, 20 minutes. Fall's right around the corner. HelloFresh is here to help you plan for the busy season ahead. School's back into session. Maybe your work is picking up. You choose your recipes, you pick your delivery date, and you lay back and enjoy the last days of summer. You can do all this now. HelloFresh keeps your taste buds on their toes. They have 40 chef-created, crafted recipes to select from every week. Every week. Again, they have like from family-friendly to fit and wholesome. There's all sorts of different menu plans. You can also add snacks, sides, and more to your HelloFresh order. You simply just shop HelloFresh Market, take your pick from a curated selection of over 100 add-on items. So this is literally one-stop shop. When life gets busy, you don't call for delivery, you get HelloFresh. It's 25% cheaper than takeout. In my mind, actually, in New York, it's even more cheaper. And it's less expensive than grocery shopping, too. Plus, no waste. Just choose your recipes, receive fresh, pre-proportioned ingredients, and you can get cooking quick. Go to HelloFresh.com/50majority. Use code 50majority for 50% off, plus free shipping. You will not regret it.
We are back, and we are joined now by Vinnie Perrone, President and Principal Officer of Teamsters Local 804. Vinnie, thanks so much for coming on today.
Thank you, Emma. Thanks for having me.
So just give us a sense of the scope of this tentative agreement that is actually being voted on next week, I believe, the 22nd, if I'm not mistaken, right?
The final tally will be on the 22nd, yes.
Final tally. Gotcha. So this deal with UPS, how many UPS Teamsters will this benefit? And what would a strike have looked like had UPS not made concessions? And now I know that, it still needs to be agreed upon in principle, but if you could just give our audience a sense of how historic and massive this is.
It is a massive tentative agreement. It covers 340,000 Teamsters. And when you said UPS made concessions, I almost got confused, because usually it's been the other way around with the Teamsters making concessions, but not this time. So, it covers 340,000 people. And I believe that it's going to help all 340,000 people with the pay increases, the general wage increases. We're still going to have COLA increases because, if the inflation is up, our members across the board, from our part-timers to full-timers, are going to benefit with AC in the trucks, Martin Luther King Day as a holiday, stuff that we've never had before. And it was always pipe dreams, So I know that some people might not be happy, but I mean, enhanced language on subcontracting, autonomous vehicles and driver-facing cameras and drones not being allowed. Language referencing like what just happened with the pandemic, where the company went to individual locals across the country and tried to make side deals with them. That's not going to happen anymore. They have to go through the IBT package division. The creation of 7,500 full-time jobs from part-time jobs, giving our part-timers the opportunity to fill 22,000 vacancies across the country. I think it's a win-win across the board. There's been improvements everywhere.
Yeah, I mean, and just to give people a sense of the scope, I was reading this in Labor Notes, which is just this, a great publication, that it's just much bigger than the last increase, because it's at least $750 over the 5-year period of the contract. And there, for example, in 1997, it was a 50-cent equivalent to 95 cents today, according to Labor Notes, increase over 5 years. So that is a substantial increase in the tiers of pay over the length of the contract.
Correct. It's substantial. I was a UPS package car driver for 25 years. I joke around that I still know how to use the little device that they scan packages with, the Diad. So I'm not too far off the truck, as they say. And in 30 years now, I've never seen a contract like this. So, just the elimination, because we were talking about concessions before, the elimination of that second tier 22.4 job, which was basically a driving job that they were paying $6 an hour less for. Nobody realistically thought that we would be able to get rid of that position, because once these companies like UPS latch on to something, very difficult to let it go.
Can you expand on that second tier practice? Because it basically appears like, you have the first tier of drivers, and then there was a second tier of workers who, they stated, they'll drive sometimes, they'll be paid less, but they'll do other things. And in the end, it seemed like they were just doing the same job but for less pay.
Correct. And that was something that was given away 5 years ago. I still don't know the reason for it. I wasn't involved in national negotiations then. So it was to basically give the company more flexibility so they could utilize these people, these members, as people loading the trucks and offloading the trucks if they had to, and working on weekends as package car drivers. But that was, companies like UPS, they want these agreements signed, they want to make these deals, and then they go and start violating these agreements before the ink is even dry. So in my local alone, I represent 8,000 members at UPS. We got an influx of 700 and something 22 fours. And, it's great. People want the job. It all happened during the pandemic. The jobs were out there. People wanted to work. And then it sinks in after a while that I'm doing the exact same thing that the guy or girl next to me is doing, and I'm getting paid a lot less an hour to do it. So that wasn't fair. It wasn't a good bargain for the Teamsters, so thank God that that's eliminated.
Yeah, right, exactly. And can you also touch on the 6th workday part, which also is this awesome concession that UPS gave, because that goes hand in hand really with that second tier of driver system.
Yes, and in New York City, where my local is, we were not required to come in on our 6th day. All right, so we had that language in our local supplement. But in traveling across the country, especially the Northeast, every place I went to, campaigning, etc., members would see this beautiful Teamster logo on my shirt, and they would start complaining about why are we being forced in on a 6th day. And, a company like UPS, they'd rather make people work more overtime than hire more people and pay the pension benefits and the health and welfare benefits. So that was something that, it flustered me, and I didn't have an answer for it, but because it was in other parts of the majority of the country. So that was eliminated also. And, just the fact that you can have a better quality of life and spend more time with your family and actually have a weekend without having to get stressed out that you come back on Monday and they're going to try to put you on a notice of discipline or discharge. That's a tremendous advantage for our members also.
And that's what creates that 7,500 extra jobs, because now they don't have to, or part of it, but now UPS isn't going to spread all of the existing workforce so thin because of the fact that they eliminated the forced 6th workday. And it goes into the fact that, these companies aren't technically job creators. They employ as many people as they can to make sure that their bottom line is still as profitable for the executives as possible. And without a robust labor movement to advocate and robust unions to advocate for worker protections, they're going to continue to spread their workforce so thin without having to hire additional people until, again, you guys flex your muscle and say enough is enough.
Correct. And, that comes also with the part-time pay that was extremely low, that's now being raised. And, they still pay these market rate adjustments across the country, but our members that are affected by these market rate adjustments, they're going to get the general wage increases too, right? So our whole goal is to bring up the standard of living for working class people.
Can you explain the market rate adjustment piece to our audience, if you don't mind?
Sure. That's a really cute thing that UPS uses. They will never use a market rate adjustment in New York City, for example, because they have blatantly told me, we don't care. 20 people will quit, we'll hire 50 more, and hopefully 20 of those will stick. So in these outlying areas, or even labor is not available, so they will drive up the minimum that they pay for members, for their employees, well over the contractual wage. So it'll happen in places where the population is very thin, or they can't get people to work on a specific shift in the middle of the day, paying what they were paying, $16 and change an hour. In some states, it was even lower. So those market rate adjustments, they're still there, but our members will get the general wage increases, even though they might be making more than the contractual requirement.
You mentioned some of the surveillance that was eliminated in these negotiations of the drivers and the workers. Can you explain why that was a priority for you all in your negotiations, and what kind of effect that has on the workforce with the drones and I guess the drones are for delivery or something, but
yes.
But the surveillance, as well as like the anti-labor technology that some of these companies, including UPS, are trying to employ?
Well, we started seeing these driver-facing cameras about a year ago, maybe a little more, in New York, and they started popping up in other parts of the country. So it's driver-facing cameras with sensors. So now you're being monitored all day long. The job is dangerous enough. Okay, they're listening in, or they had the potential to listen in on phone calls you might be having with your family, on conversations you might be having with your union representatives, and that's not the way to live. That's not the way to work. And thankfully, Sean O'Brien heard it. The General Executive Board heard it. The bargaining committee heard it, and that was one of the first things that we went after, was the driver-facing cameras. And they're not supposed to be there. They're not going to be there anymore. And I will tell you that a lot of other places that I've seen, other shops, other companies, they've been using this for many, many years already. So again, once it's established for 10 years at least, then for a union to get that back is a really tremendous thing.
Yeah, because I mean, we've had interviews on this program about truckers who are experiencing some of the effects of this monitoring technology on, their attentiveness on the road, and a lot of those trucking companies are trying to circumvent unions to the best of their ability. So, like, again, just to give people a sense of the scope of this agreement, it's, as you say, 340,000 UPS Teamsters nationwide. That is more than the tally of 323,000 U.S. workers who have gone on strike so far this year in this like incredible labor summer. So this affects just so many people. I wanted to also touch on the air conditioning in the trucks that was negotiated as well. I think that was one of the first concessions, if I recall. But if you could just explain what some of the conditions were like for the drivers that led them to demand this.
Well, the company, Carol Tomei herself, has said that we understand the earth is getting hotter, temperatures are going up. So we're going to give you fans and cooling sleeves that you can soak in water, in Arizona, and stay cool in 116 degree temperature. So air conditioning has been, we've been beating the drum over AC. Look, a UPS truck is not going to be like a Mercedes or a BMW or my personal car, where I keep it at 65 degrees because I just hate the heat. But,
I hear you.
If you cool the temperatures off even a little bit, it's going to help some people out. I myself have been taken to the hospital and had to go to doctors when I was on a package car for heat exhaustion. And, you're working out there in the heat, you don't even realize it. And you get sort of, indoctrinated into it that this is what you're supposed to do. But, just the fact that we had to argue and negotiate that they have to treat their employees, our members, like human beings, tells the story of what this company is all about. Right. So we fought them tooth and nail over it. And we got a commitment for the next 5 years, 28,000 package cars out of whatever the number is, 90,000 that they have. And you know what? In 5 years from now, they might be going to an all-electric fleet. Yeah. And everything might have air conditioning already. The thing we have to focus on now is getting better ventilation in the buildings, because they're just as bad as the package cars.
I'm curious what you think about the significance of what the pandemic did to boost solidarity among the workforce. And, in your time, with the Teamsters, what do you compare that to? I mean, comparing it to 2008, for example, and the financial collapse, like what did you observe as motivating some of the solidarity that you saw?
Well, the pandemic, I saw my members and members across the country being really scared. That's what I saw. I saw a company that did not care about their employees. We, as a union, my local, and I'm sure other locals across the country, when we heard that this was actually going to be declared a pandemic, we went and bought ourselves gloves and masks, and people were already running out of it, right? So our members were worried. Our members were sick because of this. Some members died because of this pandemic. And, the company made a windfall over it. They did not give hazard pay to our members. They said, you have a contract. It's not in your contract. I heard, and, I'm going to put this out there because I have no problem putting this out there. When I was arguing with this company about the effects of this pandemic and that they should have more concern about their employees' safety, I was told when this thing got full blown that, oh no, the public is going to see what UPS can really do now. And I don't know if I'm allowed to curse on this show, but
Go ahead.
I told the district person, I said, what the fuck are you talking about? Right. Yeah. I have people in a hospital because of this. Right? And all they kept talking about was what this could do for the company to show
PR victory.
Yep.
Yeah. I mean, that's just infuriating. Yeah.
It brought people together, but there's a lot of talk, and I wanted to mention this too. There's a lot of talk about we should have gone on strike. We should have done this, right? We could have gotten more. The general public doesn't know this. The harassment that UPS puts our members through, you can't compare it to anything. I have people that wanted to strike just for the sake of the hatred that they have for this company. Okay, and that's got to be put out there because the harassment, it continues to be through the roof.
Yeah. And what does it feel like for you as a leader for your union, right? In this time where people are so angry, as a president and a principal officer, it must. How long have you held this position?
4.5 years.
So, I mean, at this time of labor empowerment, does it make you? Does it embolden you? Does it energize you? I mean, what was the feeling like being able to represent your members like this in the time of justified and righteous anger against this company?
It's a tremendous feeling. My local's a very militant local. Local 804 has always been militant and at the forefront. We have that reputation. We're more focused now. And, as we speak right now, I just took a break because we're in the middle of an arbitration that, I'm very confident we're going to win. So it was very satisfying to see our membership come together, right? And it's very satisfying. I mean, like from the beginning of these negotiations, Sean O'Brien, Fred Zuckerman, they put it all out there. They said, this is what we're going to do. This is the plan of attack. We're going to hit the media. We're going to hit the gates at buildings. We're going to have practice pickets. We're going to build unity. We're going to build solidarity. We're going to show this company, because this company never thought in 97, they didn't think it, and certainly not now after 25 years of concessionary contracts, that members could come together as a force. And I know that when they saw these practice pickets out there and when they saw everything that was going on and the general president on everything from Good Morning America to CNN and Fox News, talking about what our members go through and what we need, that they were not happy with it. The only thing they could come up with were little blurbs about what a great company they are and how a part-time supervisor position is a great thing to do. So the solidarity has been tremendous, and bringing our people together has been really satisfying.
Lastly, Amazon, are they up next?
Sure. And, we would love Amazon to be Teamsters, but how else are you going to do it unless you prove to this huge workforce also, that collective bargaining is the way to go, that you can get pensions, health and welfare benefits, especially from a company like Amazon that has, look, the guy, Bezos he put himself into space, right? So he's wasting money on rocket ships and not giving his employees good health care. So getting this tentative agreement, hopefully it's going to fuel the fire for Amazon workers. We have them coming to our union meetings right now, and they're very happy to be there and to see what being in the union is all about. And we're going to build the momentum as a union, as the International Brotherhood of Teamsters, and we're going to show people that contracts are good for people. Good contracts are good for people.
Well, Vinnie Perrone, President, Principal Officer of Teamsters Local 804, thank you so much for your time today. Really appreciate it.
Emma, thank you so much, and I appreciate it. Keep doing what you're doing.
Thanks. You too. All right, guys, quick break. And when we come back, we're going to be speaking to Rebecca Lewis about New York City's supervised injection sites. Be right back. We are back, and we are joined now by Rebecca Lewis, senior state politics reporter at City and State New York, whose piece, I believe it was a cover piece, is entitled, "Is New York Ready to Legalize Supervised Injection Sites?" Rebecca, thank you so much for coming on today.
Thanks for having me.
So let's just start here from like a really basic level. What are supervised injection sites, and why are harm reduction advocates so in favor of them?
So supervised injection sites are a place that are overseen by either medical professionals or people with medical training for substance users to bring in substances that they have purchased outside of the facility, already pre-purchased, to use under the supervision of someone who can step in if there is an overdose. And the reason that so many harm reduction advocates are in favor of them is that the argument is that it reduces the deaths from overdoses. It's definitely a prime example of harm reduction as opposed to, abstinence, let's say. It's not necessarily existing to get people into treatment per se. Of course, that is a potential outcome for someone who might use the services that are available in supervised injection sites. But the main purpose is to ensure that if someone's going to be using, that they do it safely, and that if they overdose, they don't die. And there is, they're new in New York, new in the United States. We only have 2 in the entire country. But they've been much more common in Europe and in Canada and Australia, where they have been in use since, I believe, in the 90s, that, with fairly comprehensive data that shows that it either has no impact on the surrounding communities, which is a major thing that people are concerned about, or a positive impact, and certainly has shown, just strictly from the results, a fewer overdose deaths among those who go to the facilities.
Yeah, I mean, in Canada, for example, I believe you cite this example in your piece. They've been doing supervised injection sites since the early 2000s, and it is estimated to have saved tens of thousands of people from overdosing and dying. And I think the prime example people think of when you mention Europe is Portugal, and their process of decriminalization has been an immense success until fairly recently because of like austerity programs, right? So I mean, I don't want to make conclusive arguments here, but is it fair to say that based on examples from other countries, advocates and harm reduction types, people who want to reduce overdose deaths, are fairly high on the efficacy of supervised injection?
Yeah, I mean, if you talk to many public, whether there's public health, harm reduction advocates, the efficacy of, they will argue that the efficacy of supervised injection sites is very high. That, there are, even just here in New York, if we're just going to look at what's happening in New York, there has not been a single death since they've been in operation for almost 2 years. The On Point, which operates them, says that they have now reversed or intervened in 1,000 overdoses. None of those have resulted in deaths, and a very small number of them have resulted in ambulances being called. Now, there's certainly debate to be had about, exactly how effective they are. There are some in the public health field who point to, for example, Canada, where there are parts of Canada where the overdose crisis and the opioid epidemic has continued to get worse. I don't think that anyone's arguing that supervised injection sites have made the epidemic worse. I don't think anyone's, even those who aren't super in favor of them, are saying that they have led to more usage or, inherently have had negative results. But there are some in the field who say that, if we look at, data, for example, from Canada, that there are parts of the country that still are comparable to the worst parts of the US, and have traditionally taken a very different approach to the opioid epidemic, very much, war on drugs, abstinence only, forced treatment, what have you, very different than the harm reduction approach and social service programs that Canada has taken, but still having very similar kinds of results in terms of number of deaths, number of people using. So there's certainly some debate about whether this alone or this is the best way to go forward, but there is also still lots of data that shows that they are pretty effective. Certainly in Europe, it's hard to take into account all of the different factors that play into the opioid epidemic. But certainly if you look at, the entirety of the EU, the rates of overdose deaths, the rates of overdoses are significantly lower than the United States, and the population of the entire EU is larger than the United States. Can that be attributed entirely to the use of supervised injection sites? It's 90s, probably not, but it's certainly an interesting data point to consider.
Well, they also have socialized healthcare in many of those countries, but that also makes those supervised injection sites more robust, right? I mean, so it kind of is an elevating factor, I would imagine, in some instances.
Certainly having more robust social programs is beneficial for people who are working in the public health space. And having these sites be legal and legally recognized also are helpful. There are different types. Right now we have in New York, in the entirety of the United States, we have 2 supervised injection sites, and they are pretty robust in what they do, but in other countries they have far more pared down locations in order to do things. If there are too many barriers at what the types of facilities that we have set up here. The types of facilities are very much, you have to go in, you have to sign in, even if you give a fake name, there are records on you, and it's all, for the safety of the participants. But, there are places in Canada and Europe, for example, where a supervised injection site might just be a tent with trained medical professionals to make sure that someone doesn't overdose and die, which is not what the U.S. is doing right now. But, having the legal authority to be able to do something like that is having the ability to have different levels to engage with these types of services. It definitely is easier when the government is on board, which certainly is not at any level in New York and very limited in other parts of the country. I think Rhode Island, I believe, became the first to legalize supervised injection sites statewide, but they still haven't opened one. Whereas New York, they remain illegal technically on the city, state, and federal level. So, definitely operating in a legal gray area. And I know recently comments from the U.S. Attorney for the Southern District raised some concern because he, seemingly unprompted from a request from the New York Times, responded by saying, these are still illegal. I don't do policy. If this isn't, changed soon, I will take enforcement action, which is technically something that could be happening.
Let's talk about that there, because that is an absolutely crazy thing for the U.S. Attorney from the Southern District of New York to say. Because for people that don't know, the Southern District, it's known as, and full disclosure, both my parents actually worked there at one point, so just putting that out there, but it is known as the Sovereign District. It is the U.S. Attorney's office that's most associated with being ostensibly nonpartisan, or that has a lot of resources, so it's a go-to for large investigations, whether it be white-collar cases and things like that, because of also the fact that it covers Wall Street and financial centers. So they have massive fish to fry, right? This is the U.S. Attorney's office that is known for frying the largest fish, and for some reason the U.S. Attorney, unprompted, chooses to comment on two really mom and pop supervised injection sites in the city, where their jurisdiction is much broader than that from a federal level. Can you just speak to how absurd that is, really? You don't need to editorialize as much as I am, but it's fairly ridiculous.
It certainly came as a surprise. I don't know what specifically the Times reporter asked. I don't know the phrasing of the question that might have prompted a response like this. But I do know that for people who work in harm reduction, for those who are advocates for supervised injection sites, it came as a surprise, to say the least, because this does not seem to be in line with what the Biden administration has said about supervised injection sites, which is basically been sort of a wait and see. We'll take a hands-off approach. We'll leave it up to the local authorities. New York, it's illegal technically on all levels still. All we have is an executive order from the mayor, but NYPD has been cooperating. They haven't been shutting it down. The state hasn't sent in enforcement agents of any kind to shut it down. It has been operating with the cooperation of local governments and law enforcement. So, impossible to know what specifically they were responding to, since this was a response to a request for comment from a New York Times reporter, but it certainly came off as unusual. And especially since the federal government ostensibly has not changed their position on these sites. Obviously the previous administration has gone to court to prevent similar sites from opening in Philadelphia, for example, which is technically still in the courts, but the administration has, since Biden has taken over, has done nothing to stop New York, done nothing the past year and a half, 2 years. So it's a questionable statement. It raises the question of, where is this coming from? Is the Biden administration changing their position? Has something changed? And it's just impossible to know without additional reporting. And the Southern District has come out and said, our spokesperson for the Southern District has said that we're not going to do anything else. We put out the statement, but we're not going to do anything. We're not actually going to take any steps right now, which might be backtracking, but it definitely was surprising. It was definitely surprising, and it's very unclear what might have prompted this, since it did seem to kind of come out of the blue.
You mentioned the kind of hands-off approach from state and city officials, really, because this was a decree, or I don't know if it was an executive order, or essentially when de Blasio was leaving office, he greenlit these two supervised injection sites. Eric Adams has not done anything, to his credit, really, to reverse that, even though he ran as, Mr. Tough on Crime. But
and he does support them. He would like to see more open. He is he is vocally supportive of them.
That is maybe the first compliment that I could give Eric Adams. So that's good to hear. But what's interesting, and you write about this in your piece, is that Kathy Hochul, the governor, has not been supportive. I mean, she hasn't cracked down. But she's talked a big game about reducing overdoses, and she wants to fund fentanyl test strips. But that's for people who might be doing coke or Molly or something at a party laced with fentanyl. That is not as, I think, at the front of the list for everyday users or addicts. And the outrage, at least from my perspective and what you write about, is that the state has over $2 billion in money just sitting there from opioid settlements, from opioid makers and distributors. And there was a recommendation that this money go towards supervised injection sites like the On Point, which is the organization that leads those two in New York. If you could talk a little bit about Hochul's reticence to do anything with that money that would go towards those kinds of programs.
So I think that, the governor has spoken publicly about having family members, a family member who's died from an overdose death. Obviously a death, who's died from an overdose. The opioid crisis is something that is, personal for her. And she has, to her credit, put a fair amount of money into combating it. She's, been doing things that she feels is the right way to go. And I know that she has had conversations, perhaps not to the extent that advocates would like, but has had some conversations about the supervised injection sites, even if she has not come out publicly to support them. The thing is that I do think that she is in a tough spot. The board recommended that this opioid settlement money be used in part for supporting harm reduction services provided by overdose prevention centers, as they're also called. And her commissioner for the office that oversees substance abuse rejected it, citing the fact that it's still illegal at the federal level, still illegal at the state level. These aren't taxpayer dollars. And you would think that perhaps that there would be more leeway with how to use them, aside from the fact that it's in a lockbox for only use only for combating the opioid crisis, that this is not taxpayer money, so it's not beholden to the same rules that you would have for taxpayer money. But the governor is in a politically tricky spot. These are still not popular on a broad scale. There is a reason why there is legislation in the legislature to legalize these statewide, not open them statewide, just enable them to be open statewide, and that it hasn't passed, that it doesn't have majority of co-sponsors, that I know that I've been told that there have been members who have taken tours of the site who have privately offered their support, but haven't publicly offered their support. The leaders of both chambers have also, Andrew Sir Cousins and Speaker Carl Hastie, have not publicly offered support for them either. They have not said one way or the other if they support them, if they would work to get this legislation passed that would make it easier, give the governor one less thing to point to in terms of funding. These are still a political hot potato in a lot of ways. And I can understand the frustrations with the governor, but I do think she's in a tough spot where these continue to be unpopular. She almost lost. She came the closest to losing an election for a Democrat in over 2 decades in her last election cycle. Her opponent was a tough on crime guy, and she kind of capitulated to that. So that's what she clearly views this as a political liability. And, I don't think she's the only one. These are untested in the U.S. They are a testing ground. They have been, fairly successful that we've seen so far in New York, but they still have been facing opposition from local leaders, people who say that it's reducing quality of life. They're hardly universally accepted, even in New York after a year and a half, 2 years. And we're still, I think, another 2 or 3 years out from a much more comprehensive study on their efficacy and the impacts on the communities. So I think that there's a lot of trying to pass the football here. The legislature isn't acting, the leaders aren't acting. Honestly, neither is the city. I mean, the city has their own opioid settlement fund, and that money hasn't been used to help support these sites either. And the council hasn't given any indication that they have any plans to act at a local level to legalize them. You know, a lot of people say that they're supportive, but when it comes down to it and comes down to who's going to be ultimately responsible, I don't think anyone wants to be the person that is ultimately responsible for expanding them or funding them or, you know, doing more with them and just waiting for someone else to take that bullet.
Lastly, you open your piece speaking with Sam Rivera, who heads On Point NYC, and I just found it very notable that Sam got their start as working with the AIDS crisis in the 80s and 90s, clean syringes to reduce HIV. If you could just speak about that advocacy bleeding into the current, you know, harm reduction efforts when it comes to the usage of opioids.
You know, there's definitely a lot of overlap there. And Sam spoke about this when I talked with him in terms of, you know, there's overlap with the AIDS crisis within the LGBTQ community and efforts that were taken for harm reduction within those communities overlapping into what is now the opioid crisis. And what I really found interesting was that, you know, this was in the 90s that he was doing this work. And this was highly controversial at the time. And honestly, it still is. You know, syringes have only recently been decriminalized in New York State. The governor signed that legislation to fanfare. And it's still not universally accepted. And just to be talking with someone who's been working in harm reduction for so long, who's seen the evolution of what is considered the fringe and what is considered radical, and just seeing the changing opinions and also working through that, trying to change opinions. You know, in the 90s when the US was just starting with needle exchanges, Europe was opening supervised injection sites. So I think that it definitely gives a unique perspective and it gives perspective in general to the kind of political fights that need to be had here for those who want to see this expanded, because we are 30 years after the 90s, after the first introduction of syringe exchange programs, and they're still considered controversial. And it's only been recently that they've been deemed less controversial than they used to be. And I think that we're definitely moving faster in terms of destigmatizing the supervised injection sites after New York managed to open them. But I think it definitely, it puts into perspective the communication that still needs to happen after decades of the war on drugs, Rockefeller drug laws. You know, this is a deeply ingrained in American culture and American law. And, you know, just seeing how something as simple as providing clean syringes took so long to gain any sort of mainstream acceptance just goes to the fact that harm reduction in general is something that I think that a lot of the average Americans still have trouble wrapping their minds around, because they've been for so long told, just say no. And if you don't, you need to quit cold turkey. And if you keep using, you are less than human. You know, there's a long history that needs to be combated there. And I think that having, you know, the fact that Sam started out in the 90s with this and is now doing what is the cutting edge in the US really just goes to show that this is a decades-long process.
Absolutely. Rebecca Lewis, senior state politics reporter at City and State New York. The piece is called "Is New York Ready to Legalize Supervised Injection Sites?" We will put a link to that in the description wherever you're listening to this or watching, and at majority.fm. Thanks so much, Rebecca. Really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.
For sure. All right, guys, going to wrap up the first hour, the free hour of this program. Head into the fun half if you want access to the fun half. You got to become a member. Join themajorityreport.com. Support our show. Hey.
If you don't want to be a free rider.
Yeah. Well, I mean, honestly, in the end, like, we don't really want to create many barriers, if at all, to our programming, but it's just like about helping us out. That's
we'll
the
make
reality.
you click another link.
Yeah. But if you like the show, really, and if you have the means, it helps us out. It really does. You know, helps pay for Matt and Bradley and I to get paid and
maybe find an apartment that has air conditioning.
Yeah. Oh my God. I'm like, I don't even want to get. If I talk about it, I might cry. I am in the midst of a really, really massive issue with my apartment. I'm in a 6-week fight with the landlord about fixing the air conditioning, which has now taken a massive turn for the worse and spilled water while we were sleeping all over on the floor, and the floorboards are completely messed up.
Not what you want to see.
Yeah, I mean, and like I'm getting close to like, you know, making some threats. I'm getting pissed off, but landlords are leeches, and that's the lesson of this story. So yeah, that would be nice. Help us out. Join themajorityreport.com. On that note, I have been ranting to Bradley and Matt about this for a long time. So that's that. But Matt, what's happening on Left Reckoning?
Oh, last night we had Left Reckoning. We had Ben Burgess in the post game. We talked about what did we talk? We had a segment, and I can't remember what it was about because I did not sleep very well myself last night. We also had Saurabh Amari. An interesting conversation. I mean, we were very upfront. It's the first time we've had a conservative on the program. He's from Compact Magazine. He has he's a conservative who is nostalgic for New Deal social democracy.
Right.
And what I found interesting, and like, look, I think like ultimately, I'm blocked by Saurabh for being rude to him like years ago. I wasn't there because they had to record it during the show yesterday, not because of that. But it's just interesting to me because where he's going. One, I don't think there's going to be any sort of room for it on the right. I think he's going to get expelled. But also, it's directly sort of the inverse of the MAGA communist thing. Like what he's saying is like, I like all the social conservatism, but we need to be economically like sort of anti-capitalist basically to a certain extent. And instead of saying like we need to actually change the social issue, I don't know, it's a very ultimately like we don't share politics, but it's just interesting to have that conversation and see how that's going to develop. And my suspicion is that Saurabh's going to be kind of alone in saying that we need to raise union power on the right, but we'll see.
Certainly. And on ESPN, we spoke about the insane Michael Orr story, how The Blind Side was a lie. I mean,
you see Matt Walsh is coming out and saying, is coming to his defense. He says
but we should cover that at some point.
The defense is that apparently Michael Lewis never said he was adopted.
Michael Orr?
Who is the writer?
Lewis is the writer of the book?
Yeah.
Gotcha, okay.
You're right, and it's like, kind of like books for business guys that want to feel like pat them on themselves for reading a book. Although, I mean, I guess his work ahead of the financial crisis wasn't bad, but... like apparently he never claimed that he was actually adopted, and apparently now this guy is shaking down his adopted parents, and they're the victims actually.
We will. I know. It's like it's absolutely crazy. I saw some takes like, why did he wait so long? Or how did it take him so long to realize it? I'm like, I mean, who cares? It's total victim blaming. He was placed in conservatorship when he was a high school senior after he had just turned 18 by a family that was like, you're really poor and we're going to give you a place to live. And then coincidentally, we're also Ole Miss alums and you're going to go there and then we'll have complete control over your life story and monetize it and you won't see a dime. Yeah. Allegedly.
The lady seems like a psycho. I saw another...
she was on Fox News when I was like Googling stuff about it. So back in the day.
I saw another... image that she posted, I think, to Facebook, and says like, "Hey, I saw these two young black kids at a table at a fast food place, and I assumed they were up to no good." And so I went over.
Like, my friend thinks they're up to no good, so they're crouching over a table, and she was like, "I'm just gonna go right to the source and see what's going on."
She sat down next to them, and they didn't say anything for like several minutes. And I just say like, imagine if, like, say that black teenager sat down at the table with her family or whatever and didn't say anything for like 40 seconds or whatever. They would call security immediately, but that's what she did. And then she said, what did she say? That, it turned out that they were actually just trying to like squeeze some money together to watch a basketball game or something like that. So turns out you shouldn't judge kids.
Right.
Like, thank you. Oh, wonderful message. Thank you for, like, it's heartwarming.
And also, per that post that Matt retweeted, the boys commented on the photo being like, I didn't realize the reason why she came over was that she thought we were up to no good. She was like, she didn't say any reason as to why she came over, what precipitated it, and she just was like, this would be a great photo opportunity, and didn't tell us why.
Well, it sounds like a little bit like the way that she operated in relationship to Michael Orr. You know, she's a bit of a snake in the grass.
Yeah.
So allegedly, obviously, maybe there's smoke where there's fire. There's smoke.
Like, I've seen enough.
I mean, it was a white savior movie to begin with, and the vibes were terrible. And it's a shock.
I mean, I never saw it because it seemed just uncomfortable.
Well, I mean, when did it come out? 2009.
Like I saw Remember the Titans about 8 times in theaters, so like that was maybe my fill of that.
I was in high school, and it was like I would see any movie that came out that was about football at that point. So I was becoming a pretty big fan at that time. So in my defense. But yeah, I mean, I also saw The Help, so that's not in my defense. But
that is like that sort of master's graduate school level Karening, and when you go sit down at a table with black teenagers.
She's got it perfected. So yeah, we spoke about that. We also spoke about the college football realignment and how it's turning into a super league and everyone's getting paid except the players, and more. YouTube.com/ESPN show. All right, guys, the number is 646-257-3920. See you in the fun half.
Left is best. Jamie and I may have a disagreement.
Yeah, you can't just say whatever you want about people just because you're rich.
I have an absolute right to mock them on YouTube.
He's up there buggy whipping like he's the boss.
I am not your employer.
You know, I'm tired of the negativity.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to upset you. You're nervous, you're a little bit upset, you're riled up.
Yeah, maybe you should rethink your defense of that, you fucking idiots.
We're just going to get rid of you.
All right.
But dude. You want to smoke this joint?
Yes.
Do you feel like you are a dinosaur?
Some good shit.
Exactly. I'm happy now.
It's a win-win.
It's a win-win-win.
Oh, hell yeah.
Now listen to me. 2, 3, 4, 5 times. 847-906-501-457. 2, 38, 56, 27. 1 half. 5 eighths. 3.9 billion.
Wow.
He's the ultimate math nerd.
Don't you see?
Why don't you get a real job instead of spewing vitriol and hatred, you left-wing Limbaugh?
Everybody's taking their dumb juice today.
Come on, Sammy.
Dance, dance, dance.
Ooh.
Rand Paul. I had my first post-coital scene with a woman. I'm hoping to add more moves to my repertoire. All I have is the dip and the swirl.
Fine, we can double dip.
Yes, this is a perfect moment.
No.
Wait, what?
You make under $1 million a year. You're scum. You're nothing.
Excuse me? Fuck you, you fucking liberal elite. I think you belong in jail.
Thank you for saying that, Sam. You're a horrible, despicable person.
All right, gonna take a quick break. I want to take a moment to talk to some of the libertarians out there. Take whatever vehicle you want to drive to the library. What you're talking about is jibber jabber.
Classic. I'm feeling more chill already.
Good. Donald Trump can kiss all of our asses.
Hey Sam, hey Andy, are you guys ready to do some evil?
Hitler was such an idiot.
That guy might be a Nazi.
Agree.
No.
Death to America.
Do.
Yes.
Wow.
Wow, that's weird. No way! Unbelievable. This guy's got a really good hook.
Throw our hands up.
Ooh. Wow.
Sam, I gotta get off.
No worries. Let's. I want to just flesh this out a little bit. I mean, look, it's a free speech issue. If you don't like me,
Hey, shut up.
Thank you for calling into the Majority Report. Sam will be with you shortly.
We are back. We are back. The phone lines are open again. The number is 646-257-3920. We'll read some IMs and get into it. Kowalski from Nebraska, howdy, Majority Report. Great discussion on safe injection sites. I got into quite the argument in the co-op group chat with an individual that was very much against safe injection sites because his sources, which were all from a Catholic church-funded think tank, said that it increased drug use, crime, death, and lowered property values. Oh, the property values. I mean, that's by the way, the same argument.
I gotta throw that in there.
That people made about, putting public housing in, a place like Yonkers, for example, as documented in that mini-series with Oscar Isaac, Show Me a Hero, which I'd recommend everybody watch.
I'll throw some video. We played some video of Oklahoma City Council last night on Left Reckoning. That's the clip I was unable to remember last night, but the other thing we played was these folks saying, hey, I worked hard, and if you build public housing here into this community that, just happens to have been a sundown town until the Supreme Court said, you can't just, tee off on minorities after the sun goes down, and is now an exclusive suburb of Oklahoma City. And so exclusive that... So exclusive. Oh, yeah, if you have it. So exclusive that the developer, which is, I think, the tweet after this one, has to say, like, hey... I know all you homeowners want to see your property values go up, but literally nurses can't afford to live in our community that work in our hospitals.
Yeah, so and you know what's the good thing about being a homeowner, as long as you're not in a floodplain, your house is always going to go up in value. Basically always. That's because you have the privilege of owning property and everybody else is renting.
Exactly. We have all this stuff about what's causing homelessness? Is it some pathology in the homeless person?
Yeah.
Is it it's because of these people right here. Go ahead, Brad.
There was so much said tonight that was frankly embarrassing.
This woman is critical of the people we are too.
We come here because we want our privacy. We want our single family homes. And our country runs on the free market. We're not a socialist communist society that our government would shape our community according to what they want. I came to Edmond. I didn't live in Edmond proper when I first came. I lived in an apartment. And then later on, I was able to move inside Edmond proper. As you progress, so is your ability to live in a certain place. That's a free society. That is what we are. We're not a socialist society.
I know I can tell you I worked my butt off to get here. And I don't want to see anything happen here that could diminish our stock, our investment in this community as individual residents here.
But I worked long and hard over many, many years to get there. We can't afford, for a lot of us that have invested a lot of money in our homes, that's in many cases the biggest asset we have. We can't afford to have those assets depreciated on us because of what.
All right, and now, just play the second one here. This is a developer and some other council members speaking, more on our language.
I've been a builder and a developer here in town since the 80s. I would like for some of these people that are standing up and saying, we worked hard, we worked long, to come out and work an open house with us some weekend. The Parade of Homes brings in hundreds and hundreds of people, right? Nurses, teachers,